This podcast is rated E for explicit. Dear love interest, why wasn't I enough? She doesn't really love you. She just wants to taste your stuff. So like every bitch that barks from behind a picket fence, I wanted to see her heart in my fists as I clench. You met me in the midst of many things. Shedding skin, sprout wings, looking at life as a spiritual being through a human lens, having conversations with God about so many things. This show is your invitation. The poet God is the conversation. In the Plight of the Pansexual, Denzel spoke briefly about his relationship with his ex, Jaszmine, and the difficulty in introducing a heterosexual woman to a polyamorous relationship. If you listen to that episode, you probably have a ton of questions for Jaszmine. Well, she's here to tell her side of the story. And what a story it is.
Denzel and I met, and it was like boom, like instant
Clicked.
thing. Mm-hmm. He made it very clear, like intention wise, stuff like that, and I really like that.
Right.
I'm pretty sure I was just like, hey everybody, I got a man, because I never had like a boyfriend or that kind of thing, so it was like really new to me. Because I would be like, oh yeah, this is my boyfriend. And they're like, what? And I'm like, yeah, this is my dude.
Right.
He's mean. He's mean, but not all the time.
And also, I hadn't gotten an opportunity to see and observe the two of you in a space together until you guys had came here together.
Oh,
you know,
that's so true.
That's true. Yeah, because before that, I hadn't seen you guys anywhere together. Although we were on the same campus, but it just never worked out that that we hung out like that, because he wasn't. Maybe it was a scheduling or whatever. So let's talk about that day.
I remember, because, I love Yo Q.
Right.
So I think for me, I get excited with everybody anyway. So I'm like, oh, we're going to go see a Q. We have Star, and everything else to go see.
Right.
So,
right.
Star is the cat for
right.
the audience.
right.
So, and now that I think about it, that's actually a really good point, that you had never seen us together like that.
Right.
Because I think somewhere along the lines, he was just like, oh yeah, I had a small crush on Akil. I'm like, okay, like, whatever. Because, like, I'm like, oh, Akil is cute, whatever. And we have a very...
Wow. Wait a minute. What? He told you he had a crush, and what was your thought?
My thought was like, oh yeah, Akil's cute. Like, like...
So you didn't...
You
didn't take it...
I didn't take it as deeply as
he meant it.
Yeah.
Okay.
And so I kind of found out when you found out that it was a little bit deeper than I had anticipated. But at the same time, the way I see people is kind of like, if you're with someone, you may have felt some way about it before, whatever. Because he kind of, when Denzel speaks, it's kind of, it's either there or it's not. And so sometimes it can kind of get confusing in the mix.
Right.
But my thing was, it's like, sure, he may have felt this way about you at a certain time, whatever, but he's with me, so he's dealing with that on however he's dealing with that.
Gotcha. Okay.
So, but my thing is, even then, it's like, I'm attracted to, I personally am a straight woman. That's just how I am. But my thing is, we established in our relationship, like, I don't have a problem with you looking. because Lord knows I am. Okay,
Right.
If I see someone who looks good to me,
right.
I'm going to look. And my thing is, it can be male or female. My thing is, I have no problem with people admiring other people's beauty.
Gotcha. Right.
Because,
that's another level. Yeah.
Yeah. That's my thing is, I'm comfortable.
Of course.
Because I feel like a lot of people feel like, oh, I can't even look at another person. Like, that's crazy.
That's ridiculous.
My thing is, you should
Absolutely.
admire the beauty in everyone. Like,
right. Of
my
course.
thing is, it's small. Like, I ain't got no booty. So for me, if I see somebody with a nice butt, I'm like, oh my God, like, I want,
Right.
I want that.
Right. You admire those qualities in somebody else.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But, my thing is, as long as you know where your heart's going at home, then that's cool.
Right. Yeah. And actually, like, to build on your point, I think if your significant other is acting as though they're blind to somebody else, maybe then you should be concerned because it's just not like...
It's just not true.
Yeah. It's kind of weird. Like, okay, so you don't see her or you don't see him or...
Because I'm looking at both.
Right.
Best believe.
So, yeah. Okay. So, so interesting. So when he sat on the bed and you were getting comfortable and everything, and then he started to go deeper into it, and I think I remember questioning the level of the crush because I think when he said it, I also assumed what you said, what you thought, what you felt.
Right.
And so... in the back of my head, because I wasn't privy to the prior conversation, I was thinking to myself, there is no way that he could be really telling me that he has a crush on me in that way in front of his girlfriend. There is absolutely no way that he could be doing that. Unless I'm in a twilight zone and somebody needs to, like, wake me up. Like, what's going on?
Yeah.
So that was... the wheels were spinning in my head at that time, and I was looking at you to see, is she comfortable? Or... And so I just remember, you kind of like in the corner, like looking, and I don't know what. Now I can ask you, like, okay, what was going through your mind as he was going deeper into the explanation as the level of this crush at the time?
I think at the time, so I will say, like, I kind of had, like, these battles, I would say, even with, like, my own self, like, because we had, just, let's say, regular conversation.
Right.
And so he'd mention, like, every now and again, he's like, oh, I don't know if I'm bisexual or if I'm not, or what this is or whatever. So
wait a minute, so during these conversations that you were having, you felt like he was still trying to figure out where he was at?
Absolutely. Yeah.
That's interesting.
So I will say, like, he, at that time, it's kind of like he didn't really know.
Okay.
Where he was going. He didn't really know what, like, I'll say, like, not going to say what he wanted.
Right.
But he didn't know, I guess, how he feels about people in general.
Gotcha.
Or how he could feel people.
Okay.
For me, I mean, I was going through my own, like, because, we'd be having discussion, like, I'd be like, oh, yeah, that guy's cute over there, just as a regular schmegular type of thing, and he'd, acknowledge it, and I was like, okay, cool, but I think that conversation, it made me realize, like, okay, like, it's, how it's, like, in the back of your head, like, okay, like, my boyfriend could be bisexual, but, like, he's with me regardless, so part of me was like, does it really matter?
Right.
Or I'm like, does it matter?
Right.
To me.
Right.
So I think for me, it was just like, because for me, it's like you have like this ideal of a relationship, and mine was a little bit different. And mind you, it's also my first relationship too.
Right. Okay. I didn't even know that.
Yeah. Well, I don't acknowledge whatever that was.
Right.
Before previous.
Right. Okay.
But I think for me, like, even just sitting on there, I'm like, okay, so, like, he said something. And for me, my thing is, like, he's saying something out loud, which is kind of like, for me, it's saying, like, okay, I'm more sure. So it's like, even if
like
it's...
solidifying it a little bit?
Yeah, a little bit. So I think for me, I can be doing one thing, I'm sitting here processing all the other stuff. Right. So, like, as you guys are having this discussion, I'm, like, processing, like, what the F am I going to do? Like,
oh, my God.
Because also now, because it's both of us together.
Right.
So we're a unit.
Right.
So I'm like, okay, like, the way my family is, and his family's a little bit different. So my household, I mean, my mom and I talk about sex in general.
Gotcha.
We will be out there talking about whatever, however, the tricks, the game,
right,
the everything.
The everything.
But his family, I know he can't be as open
right.
with stuff. Well, for me, let's say that would be like the taboo thing to talk about,
right?
Because I'm not part of the LGBT community,
right?
Anything like that. I'm not like in the community.
Yeah, I know what you mean.
I'm a friend, but
right.
I'm not.
Right.
You know,
right.
I'm not actively involved. I don't have to worry about people coming for me, essentially.
Right, in that way. Right.
So I think it's like, because I'm so used to being so open,
right.
It's kind of hard not being able to
be open
to his family, or it's like I want him to be able to be open, but it's not as possible.
Right, because you're living your life with a sense of freedom that he hasn't yet been able to do.
Yeah. But I think my thing was more so, especially here, it was like, okay, I know where Akil stands with this. I know where I stand in this. He is just getting whatever off of his chest, essentially. So my thing was, it's kind of like he was feeling however before. And I'm like, okay, that's obviously changed. Now
right.
that our dynamic has changed.
Right.
So, like, let's say we're all besties and buddies.
Right.
That's one thing. But now it's like he's made that decision to be with me.
Right.
More with Jaszmine when we return.
I am so excited to be a part of the wonderful world of podcasts, and to celebrate, I'm giving away a copy of my book, Lies I Never Quite Believed, which averages 5 stars on Amazon and iBooks. Now, a drawing will be held after each episode of Season 1. All you have to do to enter is subscribe, rate, and review this podcast on whatever platform you happen to be listening on. And then send me a screenshot at poetgodmail@gmail.com. That's poetgodmail@gmail.com. This giveaway is only eligible for listeners living in the United States of America. The impression from conversations with him that when you guys had started the relationship, that he had made it clear to you that he was pansexual and polyamory. And so one of the things that I had questioned him about, besides the obvious other questions about, okay, what is that? What does that mean?
Right.
And how do you work that into your relationship situation? Like how does that how does that work? And does the other person, and like to what extent does the other person have to go along with that or not go along with that in order for you to make that work? And I was thinking to myself, quite honestly, I don't know what black woman would be able to deal with that, because like that's not, a
common thing.
It's not a common thing. Bisexual already is problematic.
Yeah.
You're adding polyamory to it, which means I can be in relationship on the same level with more than one person. Now, I don't like to share.
Right.
I'm one of those people. So I could only imagine, somebody coming to me and telling me, well, I'm in love with you, but I am also in love with him and her. I'm like, excuse me?
Yeah.
Say what?
Right.
So how did that part materialize with you coming to terms with, because this, we went from, the whole bisexual thing to some heavier stuff.
Yeah.
Because obviously I'm friends with both of you guys, not just in real life, but on Facebook.
Yeah.
And so I would see some of the posts, and I was like, oh, and I was, this is awesome, And it seemed like you guys were getting like really serious. At least that was the impression that I got. And I know that he had met your family and you'd met his family, and it seemed like everybody was gelling well there for a minute. And then one day, I think you unfriended him from Facebook or something.
Oh yeah, I had to cleanse my bubble. Oh man.
Oh my God. So I think that's when I questioned him, like, okay, what's going on? You know?
Whew, Lord, bless it. Well, so I would say probably like a month, maybe 2 months, before we like split. So the polyamory thing had came up earlier in our relationship. I would say towards the beginning.
Towards the beginning, okay.
But I was kind of in a headspace of like, I'm not gonna say denial necessarily, but my thing was, I was like, I'll see what happens when we get there.
Okay.
That's kind of my thing, because that gave me time to process, like, okay, what is this? How does this operate?
Right. Had you ever heard of it before?
Oh yeah.
Okay.
Oh, yeah. My mom's friend had been in a polyamorous relationship.
Really?
So I spoke with her on how she viewed that. Hers, unfortunately, was not a good relationship, but she told me how it's supposed to be.
Okay.
And so I would do like my own personal research on seeing how people make it work, how they feel about it, what kind of person, kind of see like what kind of person you have to be.
Right.
Let's say to function in that good of a relationship.
Right.
Because I will say it's not for me at all. But I understand how it operates.
Okay.
Me, I'm not sharing. That's just not happening.
I don't even know. No.
But what happened was, I think for me a major shift in our relationship was Denzel was not thinking, first of all. And I might be reliving the moment, excuse me. But Denzel was not thinking. So it was, I think, the day before. I would say like it was a little bit after Christmas. The day before, it was like nighttime-ish area. I was about to go home. And he was like, hey, we're going to have to talk about like my polyamory, yada, yada, yada. That day, I cried home. I cried driving home. Just
from him saying we're going to have to talk about...
Yeah, because I knew then that something was about to change.
Oh.
Like, you know how you get like this sense. I knew something was coming.
Wow.
So the next day, I was like, well, we can talk, whatever, yeah. So I go to his house, we're talking, whatever. Then he tells me that his coworker was coming over. Coworker was also the person that was trying to be in our relationship.
Oh.
He did not tell me until I was at his house.
So
she pulled up and oh Jesus, you know what?
She pulled up
because we were talking and he had like was just trying to talk to me about it, and I was just crying. I was like, at this, I can't. Like, you know, because my thing was, in my eyes, as crazy as it sounds, it was like, I'm like, what is wrong with just me? Mm-hmm. That's how I viewed it. Mm-hmm. I was like, what's wrong with just me? Like,
right.
What is it?
Right.
Like, why do you need this extra person? Or why is this person additional type of thing?
Right.
Also, I feel like when you do stuff like that, if a person's trying to enter the relationship, you speak to, let's say, the primary. You speak to the person already in the relationship.
Already in a relationship, right.
Out of respect.
Right.
And I felt like that was disrespectful.
Okay.
She made no efforts, as far as I'm aware of, to like get my phone number, talk to me, have us meet up.
To make that connection before with him out.
Right.
Yeah.
It was like she was just talking to him, whispering in his ear.
Right.
At work, whatever. Like, oh, how would you feel? Blah, blah, blah. How do you think she'd feel about it? And then I'm like, you know, because my thing is, you know, you trust the people you work with.
Right.
Generally.
Right.
So I don't think he was thinking like the way I was thinking as a woman.
Right.
And so...
And as a woman who had never been in that kind of relationship...
Yeah.
And it would be a monumental leap...
Oh, Oh yeah.
Because
it's never just about the one person. I don't care what anyone says. It's always about both people in a relationship. Because my thing is, let's say I enter this relationship, how is that going to make me feel?
Right.
Because my thing is, I knew like I didn't want to be a part of that, only because that's not how I operate.
Right.
And my thing is, I never forget. I was just like, it's not the fact that this is how you feel. It's the fact that, because we've been dealing with emotional issues, mental health issues,
right,
things like that. We had already built a better. We're like working on that together as a team,
right.
And my thing is, if someone comes in
right.
into that relationship and into that space that we've already built, and they damage it in any way, they do something to take you down. Then I'm going to feel responsible. And I'm not going to be responsible for someone else's sabotaging of how you feel in your mental well-being. So that's how I felt about that. And so
you felt that this other individual is bringing that kind of energy.
Yeah.
Into the situation.
When good people have good energy.
Right.
My thing is there's certain protocol. First of all, you have to speak to me.
Right.
First.
Right.
If you're trying to do this protocol, you speak to the person who's already there.
Right.
Out of respect.
Right.
Bump Denzel.
Yeah.
It's now me.
Right.
Because you've already done what you needed to do to get him where he needs to be.
Right.
Now you need to speak to the other person who's going to be you speak to all affected parties, not just the one that you want.
Of course.
And I just knew it wasn't, for me, I could just sense
you felt that
there was she wasn't genuinely caring for him and his well-being.
So did you sense that evening with what unfolded there?
Yes.
Okay.
I would say only because I'll never forget. I was in the garage. I was in the garage, and I was getting ready to go home. So I had shaken her hand.
Oh, you shook her hand.
You lucky. She lucky. Because you gotta imagine, I was already boohoo, ugly, crying.
Did she see any of that, by the way?
Oh no.
Oh, okay.
At that point, I was just like, let me get my life. And
okay, so this wasn't Jerry Springer. Okay.
Yeah, it wasn't. So I mean, in my head, I was like, I was going through so many emotions. I'm like, first of all, now you got her coming to the house. Your parents are not home. They don't even know who she is.
Wow.
That's one. So my thing is, you haven't even told that's another piece. You haven't even told your parents that you haven't included this into the mix like that.
Right.
Which from my understanding, I found out later that I guess he did kind of tell his mom and dad, but not on a for real, like, this is how I might want to live my life way. They kind of just brushed it off. His parents just kind of brushed it off.
Gotcha.
So I shook her hand. She said, "Nice truck." I said, "Okay." I got in the car. She went to his door, the front door. And my thing is, when someone's in distress. So even if you pull up on a situation, I don't care who you are, I don't care what relationship you have. If you pull up on a situation, you're like, "Hey, is everything okay here?"
Right.
She was not like that. She knew there was distress between him and I, and instead just decided to still have lunch. So I got in the car. Denzel tried to give me a kiss. I was like, And my thing is that she's watching. I'm like, how does that make you comfortable?
Right.
So they ate lunch or whatever. I did not talk to him for a few days because I had to process. I went straight home. I talked to my mom. I was like, "Mama."
That's a lot of processing.
Yeah, and my thing was, she told me, she was like, "You need to don't speak to him for a few days because that's a lot."
Yes.
That's a lot for a person to... And then on top of that, first of all, I'm driving away angry, and you're still about to have lunch. Like, that's...
Right.
What?
Yeah.
Come on now.
Yeah, because you feel almost... I could only imagine that in a situation like that, I would probably feel like, oh, so did I just move down a peg? Or...
Yeah, I'm like...
because... Okay. Okay. How should I feel?
Yeah, and I felt kind of like, at the time, I'm like, if you see that to someone, if you see someone, like, in that situation, like, either you tell her to turn that ass around and go home, or you give it a second.
Right.
To mellow out, but, like, you don't just go finish having lunch, or have the lunch, because he wanted me to have lunch with her, but I felt kind of like I was set up in a way.
Yeah.
Because it's just like...
Yeah.
You're giving me all of this stuff at one time.
Right.
And like, my thing is, you could have told me one day and then 2 days later had her be like, hey, I want y'all to have lunch and see how that goes.
Do you think you would have been okay with that?
You ain't gonna come home boohoo crying to me over what she did to you.
Right.
That's not what I'm doing.
Right.
Because guess what? Had you not been with her, you wouldn't be boohoo crying. I can apologize for me.
Right.
You can talk to me about how I made you feel.
Right.
And I can say, hey, I apologize. How can we fix this?
Right.
I can't fix whatever energy she's giving you. I can't. And my thing is, even if she were to hurt him, then that's my main thing. I didn't want. I knew about his past.
Right.
I knew he'd been hurt.
Right.
And I knew the energy that she was giving would have given him that hurt.
Right.
And I'm not about to be even involved or responsible.
You didn't want to have to clean up the wreckage.
Yeah, I'm not here to clean up. I'm here to build. I'm here to. If you need a little bit of help, because we all need a little bit of help, I'm here to help you out.
Listen, one relationship, okay, 2 people in a relationship is difficult enough. Right. I couldn't even imagine, and I think I said this to him too. I can't imagine what the dynamics of having multiple relationships would be. And I think I'd asked him how much. Like, okay, is there a limit? He said, I think I could probably do 4 or 5 or something like that. And I was like, excuse me?
Okay, Denzel.
4 or 5? That's
high.
I can't even, my head just exploded,
I only have 4 or 5 friends.
I mean, exactly. Because that's an interesting point. Like, when you talk about like friendships, I don't keep a lot of friends myself. Because I hold the ones that I do keep to a high standard, so to manage those people is one thing,
Yeah.
And, I'm not having sex with those people, you know what I'm saying? So to open that and to bring all of these other things that are going on, I just can't even imagine it.
And I still can't imagine it. Can you? We'll be right back after these messages.
I knew I had to find a way to create this podcast. As all creators know, it can be a long process to bringing something that you love to life. You ask yourself the question, how can I fail? How can I fail when I must do this for my soul to exhale? Late nights, internal fights. It all seems like a small price to pay. If I can go to sleep satisfied at the end of the day. And that's why I'm committed to leaving it all on the table, to making this podcast a reflection of everything I am able to give. Because I want to see this dream live. Now you can be a part of making that vision a reality by making a small monthly donation to help sustain the future of this podcast. Apple Podcast listeners can click details at the bottom of each episode to find the Become a Supporter of this podcast link, or go directly to the support page at anchor.fm/thepoetgod/support. That's anchor.fm/thepoetgod/support. Thank you so much for empowering independent creators like me.
Oh, Jesus. I remember, y'all.
She's recollecting.
Sometimes I have like BET moments. When you think about what you did,
right?
It's like, oh, that was so dramatic. I remember. I think we were trying to get back to where we were because when I was crying, and I was like, he was just like, okay, I won't do it. We won't do it. About that relationship.
Okay.
Which to me was also kind of itchy. Because not the fact that I didn't like the lady.
Right.
Part of it was, but part of me is also like, you're not going to, because he was explaining primary, secondary, stuff like that. I was like, for me, any woman who's willing to be treated as number 2 is not someone for you. So
I thought it was an equal situation. So they're primaries?
Yeah, for him, I guess, and however he was, because when we were discussing he's like, well, I'd be with you all the time, and then... Yeah,
I summon her.
That sounds... however that goes. But he was explaining to me, like, that way, kind of like being like, you're my
Interesting.
It's
Interesting.
Kind of like that. But my thing is, so, like, in my head, I'm like... F you, but you're not going to disrespect her.
Right.
So it's just like, which is why I needed to leave.
Wow.
Because even though I loved him, my thing is, as a woman, not saying that there's something wrong with you. If you're cool with those types of relationships. But my thing is, are you okay with being number 2? And I'm not cool with that, because my thing is, if you know that you're number 2, you're going to act like number 2.
Yeah. You know what it sounds like? It sounds like a slight upgrade from being the side hoe.
Yeah.
Just a slight upgrade.
Sometimes. But I mean, obviously I wouldn't call her that.
Right.
I'm not saying all of these relationships are like that, because I feel like there's some that people are successful and they live in the same home and they do everything like that. But for me, my thing is, I thought it was same playing field. I'm a first one.
You see, that's what I thought.
But we're not going to be on the same field.
I thought it was the same kind of playing field, but you're just giving me a little bit of new insight to that, because I was thinking that everybody was on the same thing. You know what I was also wondering too, and I don't know if other people listening might be wondering this, is there like a menage a trois situation going on with, is everybody in a relationship like that have to be bisexual? Because what if he wants all of you at the same time?
I think you have to be really open, and I think you have to set, you set your boundaries and your standards early on.
Okay.
Only because I feel like, sure, you may want to like, imagine, like, you may love all your friends,
right?
But you don't want to hang out with all of them at one time,
right?
Because one is crazy and the other one's gonna get out of hand and
that's
everything
funny
like that. But I think if you have that type of relationship, it brings up the opportunity, but you have to be willing, and people still have to be, I feel like even in those relationships, you still have your own, like, let's say your own sexual preferences. Like,
right.
For me, I love in a way to where I pour and give, and I can only do one time. At a time.
Right.
One person and maybe my dog, but like, but that's how I love, and I feel like even with other relationships in my life, friendships especially, because my friends, I keep them close and I keep it small.
Right.
But it's just, I feel like you can love. For me, I feel like you can love everyone. Not saying that all polyamorous people don't have the concept of that.
Right.
But you can love as many people as you want to love, but there's different types of love.
Yeah, absolutely.
So, like, the love I have for you may not be the love I have for, let's say, my future husband.
Right.
Or something like that.
Right.
They'll all be strong levels of love.
Right.
It's just different expectations and different types of bonds that you have with those people.
Right. Different levels of energy and all of that.
Because you bring peace, boy, I tell you. You bring peace. I know I'm insane.
You're funny.
Sometimes your lesson and your blessing comes wearing the same pair of pants. And so far it seems like theirs was a bittersweet romance. But one thing's for sure, we talked about a whole lot more. So stay tuned, because you're gonna hear a lot more from Jaszmine. Keel Johnson, the Poet God. Thank you for listening.